Well, hello, I'm alone in Finland. Today we are going to be talking, preaching, ranting about marketing, advertisement, propaganda, however you wish to push this term. But first, a little part of propaganda on my own behalf. Marquee Dragon has been nice enough to grant me an affiliate code. Thanks to one of the viewers for mentioning this, because obviously in the past I have mentioned Marquee Dragon as a good place to get your stuff from, especially if you happen to be in Europe. The translation between euros and dollars means that you can usually save a bit more money on top of things. For me today, I spent 24 euros doing my renewing my subscription. I also went with that bundle that was the 3 MCTs that's up at the moment, the little save code that's there at the moment. And as it happens, doing this through Marquee Dragon, paying in euros when it's going through dollars, has meant that instead of costing me 24 euros, it's actually cost me just under 21 euros. And if you were to use the discount code that I've put down below, or to type in alone in Finland, which isn't case sensitive, in your checkout on Dragon Marquee, you will also save an additional 3% on whichever you are buying, purchasing, etc. Full disclaimer, I get a 5% kickback of that, which is something that I'm going to put back into the game. But might save you a bit of coin. If you're somebody that plays Eve, then definitely something you can check out. Marquee Dragon does do a couple of other games that require codes on their thing, so it would work on any of those as well. Just so you're forewarned. So with that being said, let's get into it. Now, you might be wondering about the term propaganda in there and thinking propaganda and advertising are not the same thing, but actually they are. The entire sort of points of these methods of communication is that they are trying to take something that they have and they want you to see. Now, they also, as a secondary part of that, want to make sure that it goes to somewhere that is useful. So for instance, if you have a product that you want to sell to 18 to 24-year-olds, they will look for advertisement that will target 18 to 24-year-olds, because there is no point in them putting out an advert that will target over 60-year-olds for instance, beer pong cups or something like this. The predominant market is what they are aiming for. And that is the same for propaganda, wherever it sort of appears, if it's governmental, if it's social, if it's these sort of terms. The whole point is not just to put out what they are trying to sell you or trying to get you to believe, it is also to target the people that is most effective towards, the potential buyers, the potential followers. And the best example of this that has ever been created is actually the Nigerian prince email. Now, for those of you that never received one of these, for 20 or 30 years, these were the biggest scam on the internet. They were the best scam on the internet, and a lot of people don't realise this, because the entire point was to put out an email which would go something along the lines of, I am a Nigerian prince or Nigerian royalty or something along these lines. I have a whole load of money that I can't properly get access to, and I want to give it to you so that you will give me some of it back and you can keep 5%, 10%, etc. Now, to you and me, to the vast majority of people, that sounds stupid. Except that's by design. That's the entire point, and that's why it's the most genius scam that's ever been put out there. It's because it did two things simultaneously. Number one, it set up the scam. So the scam was, they are going to try and sell you to give you some money so that you will return the vast majority of it. You will keep your cut. So they're preying on both greed, and they are targeting people that do not have the mental capacity to understand that that's a scam. That's the key thing. That's the most important thing. Now, you can see this done in phenomenal ways in all sorts of different places. If you look at politics, you see this constantly. The simplified argument for the people that are too simple to understand the complex argument. But people have this tendency to believe that they're smarter than they are. And this applies to all of us at some degree. It's in my sort of opinion, the true sort of intelligence is learning to question what you know already, not just what new information is presented to you, because it's your beliefs being adjusted is how you truly sort of adapt to things. But That is one tenet you will see consistently. If you're talking about people with organised religion, you will see them making arguments that fit into the knowledge that those people possess of the religion, not the religion itself. The vast majority of things are taken massively out of context, and sometimes in ways that just do not appear in the religious text, regardless of what the religion is, whether it's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Pastafarianism. Whether or not it's in the book doesn't matter. It's what the people believe, because there are a phenomenal amount of things that people believe that just don't exist. I'll give you a quick one off the top of sort of cuffs. A lot of people, atheists or religious people that know about the Christian faith, think that homosexuality is an abomination under God, except for the fact that that's never written in the Bible. Or should I say, that was never written in the Bible before 1946. The word didn't exist in the Bible. Before the 1800s, the word didn't exist. So when you're talking about 2,000 years ago, that wasn't in those texts. So it was something that was added, and it was something that was talked about. The mistranslation of the word Satan, which meant adversary, is something that started this whole sort of devil thing that just doesn't appear in the Bible. But people know it. And here's a more common one that everybody's heard. There is a particular rumour that over the course of your life, you will eat so many spiders while you're sleeping. They'll crawl into your mouth and you'll eat them. That particular thing that usually has a statistic attached to it was actually an argument about people believing false statistics. And it got so far down the line that it existed everywhere, that lots of people quote it. There's another one that's sort of, no two snowflakes are the same. You don't get them. However, if you look into it, it was actually a study done on 500 snowflakes in one snowstorm. If you understand how small 500 snowflakes are in the trillions and trillions of snowflakes in one entire snowstorm, that's essentially like claiming that you looked at a couple of people in a small African village so you can claim that blue eyes don't exist anywhere, that people with blue eyes just don't exist. That's how stupid a statistic that is. But it's something that the vast majority of us believe because we've heard it so many times. So this is the point of propaganda and advertising. The problem comes is that advertising and propaganda and marketing itself have its own sort of fake things around about it that emphasise its points. So for instance, you will hear people saying that there is no such thing as bad advertising, and that even if somebody's saying something bad about a company, the company's name's still out there. Let me give you some examples that I know about personally where that went wrong. There was a company in Britain called eSure. Used to have some adverts with a very posh playwrighty person, director of stage shows and stuff like this. The guy was irritating as hell. They put him on TV. He would come out onto the screen and say, "Calm down, darling." And everybody associated that man with that insurance company. And the idea being that insurance company is like, well, if everybody knows our name, they will come to us first when they're looking for car insurance in the UK. And what actually happened was they put a number with that. And a friend of mine, when I was at university, worked for this company. He worked for it for a short amount of time. And when he went in for his first shift, it was on a Saturday morning. He did 2 shifts, Saturday, Sunday. And then I saw him on the Monday. And I said, "How did the job go?" And he turned around to me and he said that all weekend he was doing about a phone call every 5 minutes over an 8-hour shift. And in that entire time, he had 3 phone calls that were to do with wanting car insurance. And the rest of the time, the hundreds of phone calls that he took in were people abusing him for hating the advert. That people would call in and be nasty about the company or waste his time, or they just wasted so much time. And this was the vast majority of the call centre. Now, an 0800 number, a free phone number in the UK, is something that when you call into it, the company pays the bill instead of you paying the bill. It's that way to engage your customers or your potential customers. So that company was putting out an advert that was causing so much backlash that they were footing the bill on their own phone lines for literally hundreds of people to call in and tell them how annoyed they were on the fact that they wouldn't use the company. And it cost the company so much money. This guy worked there for a couple of months, And he said what he used to do is used to put his headphones up on his head as opposed to on his ears, so tipping them up just above his eyes, and wait to see if somebody started shouting first. And if he did that, he'd hit the ring off button. And they got very good at asking sort of prompting questions right at the beginning to try and get somebody to engage with them properly, because a big part of their calls were people just wasting their time, even sometimes sounding legitimate, going through an hour and a half of a phone call trying to get insurance quotes for different vehicles and then just ringing off because they hate the advert. And that's a real world example of how something that looks like it's working well is actually awful. Now, this also comes today with the fact that people get spam emails for companies. And sometimes it's not even things that people have to respond to. And this kind of brings us back to the game that I always talk about, because more recently there's been a lot of emails coming out from them. And you get constant reminders, especially if your account goes out of Omega. You get constant reminders for this is a deal, this is a new thing, this is the shininess, this is how you can save money. And that is part of the problem, because, for instance, for me, on one of my accounts, somebody made a comment about all of the emails that they were getting from the Eve Frontier thing. And I had gone in and I had 2 emails in the same day. And I was like, okay, that seems stupid, especially it's the same email and it's been sent at different times. Maybe it was a mess up, but I am aware that I do get a lot of emails. And then I checked my spam box and I realised that I had gotten more than 2 emails, but the spam filter for the company that I use for one of my emails was automatically throwing them into spam. So I checked one of my other emails and I noticed that this was actually happening constantly, that the email for the past 3 months, because it keeps the emails for the 3 months in the spam box, had several emails from CCP. And some of them were sort of accounting for stuff that was required to be done. One of them was somebody had been banned from a report that I made. Somebody was hacking quite obviously and the report had gone through. But all of that had gone to the spam box. I hadn't set that up. I've never sort of flagged anything as spam. The only things on that email box that gets flagged as spam are things that I have tried to unsubscribe to 3 or 4 times. So this was something very weird for me, and I was like, oh, that's actually a consequence of what's going on. They are getting sort of spam flagged because they're sending so many emails. It's automatically doing it, which is a negative consequence for the company. Because if you're trying to put advertising out there and you're doing it so frequently, a company, an automatic system flags it as spam, then you're just wasting time. You're wasting internet traffic, bandwidth, all of that jazz. So it's a problem for the company. And this happens an awful lot with the sort of UI of games. Now, while I'm obviously sort of talking in the context of EVE Online, this is not the only one that does this. A good example of this is actually Battlefield. Battlefield for me is particularly annoying because when you log into it, it immediately, this is Battlefield 5 I believe, when you log into it, when you start it up, it immediately sort of shows you this, oh, this is the latest thing that you can purchase. This is the thing that you can get. This is the next season or whatever the hell they're calling it at that particular time. Except if you purchase that, it doesn't go away. So you always have to go through that even when you've gotten it. So you get blind to it and you just click off without looking at the thing in front of you. So when they change it to the new thing, you don't even see it because you've been trained to click off of the first box. So they're automatically training people to ignore their own advertising. So it's a self-defeating problem. You're making something, and it's something that part of the problem with this in companies is that people bring in marketing specialists, people with degrees in advertising, and all of this group of fuckwits that think that that's a good career. And their problem is that their training has been very pro-advertising, and it doesn't focus on the negatives. I actually used to work with somebody who had done all of this stuff. They do studies on advertising where they actually skew the results to what they're doing, so they're not helping themselves in any way. And one of the things is that the person that I worked with was trying to make a thing for the postgraduate degree where they were doing a study on the negative effects of advertising, and the university would not have it at all. They would not have it because it was negative to the course. But the negative aspects of advertising obviously help you improve the positive aspects, so they're already locking themselves into this situation. So it's part of a problem in multiple layers. You've got people that don't understand the negative sides of it, just in general. You've got people that think that it's always a good thing to put out more. You've got professionals that are the experts in their field because they've spent 4, 5, 6 years at university studying this stuff, but they've been getting a very biased section of it. And a lot of this goes into what is unfortunately referred to as the gaming bro culture, which isn't unique to gaming, but is a good sort of term for it, where you have a developer that has a very sort of unique focus, i.e. they're a software developer, a game designer, something along those lines. They don't have an understanding of the other side of it, of the financial side of it. So they look at what they are doing and they go, right, we need an expert in that, which is a good idea, a good thing to do. But they don't know how to check how much expertise their expert has. And in a sort of situation, a genre of intellectual pursuits like advertising, where everything is very heavily geared around about their own propaganda, it's difficult to separate the wheat from the chaff when it comes to that sort of noise of this is a good thing, but it's harming. And this is something that I've mentioned before. When you've got a new account, an alpha account, when you're on EVE Online and CCP games, you're sort of constantly showing, oh, this is better, that's better, this is better, as opposed to presenting it once or presenting it as you leave the game, which is actually one of the best times to do it, because as somebody's logging out of the game, they're looking at it, they're like, that might be an idea. It doesn't stay with them in the game, but it's putting an idea in their head that may fester or grow, depending on how you want to put it. But then the next time they come in, they might go, do you know what, I quite fancy trying those new ships. So you're not shoving it in their face so violently, you are coaxing them into the idea. I've had friends in my life that were like this. I had a manager who was famous. Everybody in the entire office knew the sign language for, oi, fuckwit, that's my idea. And it was because this guy, who was not malicious when he was doing this guy would shoot down any new idea, any change to the status quo he would not agree with, he did not like. However, if you put that idea out there, he would shoot it down. But then a couple of weeks later, he would come to one of the management meetings and he would come with this new idea. And he genuinely thought that he had created it, that he had thought of it. But it was somebody else's. It was always somebody else's. And it became a point in staff meetings when we were looking around and you would just see a little finger raise up. Because everybody knew that this guy had no imagination at all. He couldn't come up with a new idea on his own. So we all looked around to see which staff member had suggested it. Nobody berated him, nobody was nasty to him. We all knew that somebody else had created it, and we would look for the little finger of the person going, hey, that's my idea. Or somebody genuinely in sign language saying, oi, fuckwit, that's my idea. Which was something the entire office understood by that point. It wasn't a bad thing, nobody called it out. It was a good idea that took a different way to put in. So it was something that you knew to do. We would learn how to manipulate the manager to get the better idea done. To talk about the idea in sections in front of them. Hey, what if we did this? This could be an idea. No. Somebody else would mention the second idea. Oh, what about if we did this? This would be something useful. No. Then the third person would mention a way of tying those two ideas together separately. And then all of a sudden, this man in his head, without realising he had been manipulated into doing it, would come up with this fantastic idea for improving things. And it was brilliant. So he put it all together. He came out there. Several of the staff team that had been in the separate discussion down at the pub to get this idea implemented would just sit there knowing. And then unfortunately for this guy, because he was that type of person that wouldn't take new input, eventually that staff team left. And he was up shit creek with no paddle or boat. And it didn't end well for him. And it was because he didn't know what was going on. He didn't sort of understand the advertising around about him, how people were putting the ideas into him, where his ideas were coming from. So although he had been very successful with a good team around about him, with the right sort of stuff going on, when that ended, all of a sudden his career stopped. All of a sudden the guy who was running a very successful area in a company just couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't change, he couldn't adapt to an adapting industry. And that was a shame, that was a tragedy. But it was the advertising, the propaganda, putting the idea into someone else and learning the best way of doing it and learning how it didn't work. Because as I experienced in my early days with the exact same guy, if you came in with all the facts and figures and all of the information and said, you need to do this is the best thing, he wouldn't listen. Even with somebody who was higher qualified than him about the stuff that he was talking about, he wouldn't listen because it wasn't his own idea. And this is something that's always a good idea to keep in mind with any communication. It could be you talking to your spouse or your children. We all know about the passive aggressiveness towards other people, or allowing people to fail in a small way so that you can get the idea across to teach your kids. It's like, no, don't stick that fork into the receptacle. That's how you get electrocuted. Do you know what electricity is? Here, have a look at this battery. This lovely square 9-volt battery. Don't put your tongue against it. Zap. Well, the wall socket's like this, but it'll kill you. Lesson taught with experience. And these are the things that I wanted to talk about, because a lot of people don't recognise that although advertising has a negative sort of connotation to it, and it is actually a lot of our communication with other people. And for me, in the situation that I'm in, it is an interesting thing because I think I have ideas that could be useful in the game. And there's a couple of things that I need for those ideas to go ahead. The first is to put them in the right place. The second is to get constructive feedback to see if those ideas are good. If I go out there and I say small stations for individual players are a fantastic thing and we should have them, and 20 people come back and say that's fantastic, then I might think that's fantastic. But if somebody else comes back and says that's shit and you're stupid, I'm not going to listen to that because they've attacked me. However, if you take that same argument and turn it around, instead of saying you're shit, that's a shit idea and you're stupid, if you turn it around to say, here are the reasons why I don't think your idea is good, and here is the reasons why I think that you are not thinking about this correctly. That's constructive feedback. That's something good. It's the same basic tenet of statement, but the communication, the way that you are selling your opinion is important. And that's sort of what I'm trying to build. I would like this to be not just my opinion. This is why I talk about the feedback. I like people sort of challenging my ideas, because sometimes this is how it changes. I like people giving me feedback because that's how you grow as a person in general. Having a discussion with somebody outside of your own belief area, regardless of whether that's a belief in Santa Claus or a belief in a game, that sort of feedback is important. A funny last example of this is if you have a look at 7 Days to Die, which is a game I'm looking at playing soon, on at least on videos, but possibly on stream. What has just happened in that game is that people were asking for a whole load of things. It started as a Kickstarter, there was a roadmap, the community was asking for their things, and a new update has just come out, and that update was full of stuff that was not asked for, but had delayed things that were asked for. And then the developers came out and said, well, sorry, that was not what you wanted, our bad, but now we are going to delay those things that you asked for to fix the things in the development because you didn't like them, so it's your fault. Now, that is a correct statement. It is correct that the developers did something that they are going to have to fix, and it will extend development on other things. But the way that they put the blame for it on others instead of themselves has created such a vitriolic feedback that it got review bombed by people that owned the game, that its own community went, this is just awful. Whereas the same statement saying, we did bad, we thought this would be a good idea, we tried it, you didn't like it, we're gonna fix it. This may cause delays to other things, we're sorry about that, It's the same statement. The onus of blame is different and the way that you're communicating it is different, but it's the same statement. And this is sort of how I think it's the best way of putting it forward. You may disagree, and if you do, please tell me. Please explain why. Because, as I say, the feedback is the best thing. But I thought I'd put that out there because I was talking to somebody not too long ago about this same situation, and I mentioned the African Prince's email, and they were like, that was the stupidest thing that's ever been put out there. And I was like, no, it wasn't. Immediately assigning that opinion a sort of filtering to it just by the opinion being that way. It's like if I was going out there and I wanted to change what was happening in gaming, and I immediately said, EVE Online is the best online game, and if you do not think that, you are wrong. Now, what I would like to do with gaming is, and everything after that is just static, because if you're an EVE Online fan, you will possibly respond to that, but you may also think that I am a fanboy that has no clue. And if you're not an EVE Online fan, you just will not listen to it because I've put out a statement that you don't agree with initially. So that would immediately filter what I'm trying to say to a small group of people. Now, sometimes you might want that to happen, but sometimes you might do it incorrectly. And that's why, although this is in the context of EVE Online, and EVE Online is one of my favourite games, I will continue to play it, and I want to put it on the channel, and I'd like to be sponsored because it would help. But at the same time, it is something that it's a bigger issue in the greater gaming community. Regardless of what you play, if you're a story-focused gamer, if you're an adrenaline junkie, if you're somebody that plays weeaboo games, if you're into the sort of anime style, weirdly suggestive games that creep me out, it's still gaming, it's still the industry and the community that we're in. So have a look at it, watch out for it, protect yourself, but also filter. Pay attention to your filters and see what you agree with and what you disagree with. So as per usual, this non-TED Talk has been brought to you by a weird angry Scotsman fueled on caffeine and hate. Comments and questions below. Once again, I now have the Marquee Dragon code down below, as well as the million free skill points, and then there's all of that other stuff below. But comments are the things that I really like, I really appreciate. Like or dislike. If you dislike, it'd be nice to have a comment from you. I understand you don't have time, but thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Bye.